what holds us back is what you were talking about before. Your people, what you tell yourself in your head is, you have this voice. I call it assumptions in my research on curiosity that holds us back, right? So they make assumptions that everybody wants a judge show, or they make assumptions that everybody wants this or that. And I think people are starved for so many things, but I think that's why we got so many channels. And I wonder when that's going to get, you could either have, Roku, or you could have, all these different device or channel settings. You're buying everything separately, and it's getting to be crazy that way. And so I'm just curious where it's all gonna to develop, if it'll be devalued the way we have as speakers in a way, because there's so many channels that to compete, they'll have to undercut and get their money some other way.
Well, I want to go back to something that you just said recently about having a whole lot of eggs in your basket.
Oh, yeah.
Don't limit yourself to one. When I was training my MBA students, I said this to them, and I said, if you have one job, that's great, but make sure you provide for yourself with some other things that you're interested. It could be a hobby, and you may want to take that into an entrepreneurial setup or something. Whatever it is, you have to provide for yourself. Now, you and I have had the luxury of being college professors while we have been doing our businesses, so that if the business goes down, we still have a way to earn a living.
Mm-hmm.
And that has provided us with a lot of leeway, certainly.
And for me, multiple schools in case one school goes down.
Well, you really,
yeah.
you really go crazy. But but so but as I started to say before, when the recession hit and nobody's hiring any speakers or any trainers, or here I was in Fortune 500 companies with plenty of money to spend around, and yet nothing, everything had closed down. Yeah. So then at that moment, it was almost like at the moment, I was also starting to do television. And that started to take up more and more and more of my time. And then I became a TV personality. But who knew? That was not planned. So you have to have your eyes wide open at all times. You have to be willing to take a risk, even though you feel, I can't do that. You have to know your assets. You have to believe in yourself and believe in those assets. And you have to be able to say, sure, I can do that. And I used to do that. And I remember I was in therapy at the time, and my therapist said, you always say that. I said, I said I was going to do that. I said, sure, I could do that. And now I'm saying, oh no, how am I going to do that? He said, that's your personality. You always do that. I didn't know it was even in my personality. So now I'm sharing this with the world, saying, make that part of your personality, to believe in yourself. Don't go through that skeptical self of saying, well, can I? I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'll flop. I don't know if I'll manage this. Instead, say, yes, I can. And then go back to the drawing board and start looking at all your assets in a very positive way. It is essential, especially today.
Yeah, I love just the Nike slogan, just do it. And I think
Just do it.
There's so many people overthink it. They plan the plan to plan the plan, and they never do anything but planning. And that drives me insane.
Well, you see, but that's a lot of people that we know from the PhD world.
Yeah,
that we have.
That.
Oh yeah, you have to do this. Then you have to do this. Then you have.
Everything has to be scaffolded, and everything has to. They're thinking to Bloom's taxonomy, and everything has to be things, right? Yeah, but I think they all had meetings to have the next meeting about the last meeting for the next meeting, and I think that's not just in education. That is in so many different.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who say, no, I can't do that. I really can't.
Well, a lot of people have to justify where their job is there, right? And a lot of people's jobs don't really require them to do that much. And so they have to kind of stretch it.
Well, that's another thing that, according to my research for my book, Amplify Your Media Presence, Amplify Your Brand, according to all of that research, people are not getting away with doing very little anymore.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about at another session, we talked about Morgan Stanley's CEO saying, back to work. If you want the New York salary, you better get back to the New York office. Well, more companies are taking the lead of saying, we want you to do that also here. We want you back in the office. But now we're having a big sociological crisis because a lot of the people have moved out of the big cities. A lot of them are saying, I don't feel safe to go into that big city anymore and work every day. So the compromise has been, okay, fine. You can go in, you can come to the office 2 days a week rather than 3 or 4. And I just read this morning that some of these people who have now become, who thought that they were 100% remote, are saying, well, I can't do that. I now live a plane trip away from the original office that I had. I moved because I assumed, and that's dangerous, I assumed that we would be totally remote from now on. And some companies have gone back on their word. Some of the techie companies I read about said, okay, we said it, but now we want you back in the office. And one CEO came out and said, well, you know, you're
Gilda, I don't know if you can hear me. You froze.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, say it again. You said one CEO came out and said what?
Oh, your internet connection is unstable, it says.
Yeah, I can see you now, though.
Okay. So one CEO came out and said, unless you are in the office, you're missing out on the camaraderie that we all depend upon in our business.
So there is some of that you do.
But is there a tool to measure camaraderie? No.
Well, you know, I was on a big, I mean, I've always worked virtually in the online education realm, and they had a main office that in California. And when there'd be meetings, they'd put it on speakerphone so that I could listen in and be part of it. But nobody would listen when I'd talk because everybody's all talking.
That's exactly right.
So that was lost. I'm over here going, okay, nobody's listening because I'm over here, and they can't really hear me because it's a whole room full of people, and then
they can't see you.
Yeah,
it's a Zoom call, and of course
that was a conference call sometimes back then. But you know, I could see the same thing happening with Zoom and everything else. It's going to be interesting to see how much we will get back of all of that. You know, well, I liked it when we would work virtually and then we'd have big events a few times a year, get together. And
well, that's what has been proposed.
Yeah, that's how pharmaceutical sales always was. You know, for 20 years, I worked for AstraZeneca and 15 of them in pharmaceuticals. And we would do that 3-4 times a year, have big events about 4 days long. And, you know,
that's when, if you are not media trained or communication skilled adroit, then you are never going to have that one shining moment where people say, wow, I have got to speak to her again soon.
Yeah.
Unless you have that training. And therefore, this is another commercial for my book.
Find your book. And on that happy note, it was fun chatting this week. It's always fun. Thank you so much.